Hello, everybody, and welcome to the latest episode of the Road podcast. I'm your host, Conor O'Neill, joined today by Joe Thomas and Chris Beesley as we look ahead to Everton's huge Premier League game against Liverpool at Anfield on Saturday afternoon and reflect on the news that came out early this week that Everton's disciplinary hearing into an alleged breach of the Premier League's profit and sustainability rules has already started. But gents, there is only one place to start, and that is with tomorrow's game as we record on this Friday, damp and wet Friday afternoon in Liverpool. Joe, come to you first. Games just don't get much bigger than this, do they, after an international break?
Absolutely not. One of obviously the first game that we all look for when the fixture list comes out. It comes at an interesting time, really. Obviously, international break. You question whether it helps or hinders Everton. I think Dyche was quite frustrated. I think at the time, and because Everton once they got that win over Bournemouth, you could then look back on the four games before and say they'd hit a little bit of form. Obviously, that was thrown into quite significant jeopardy by the Luton result in between. But after the Bournemouth win and the emphatic nature of that, he was obviously able to say that got a little bit of positive momentum here to go into the derby. And it might have been disrupted by it. But on the flip side, something I've kind of written and said a lot over the past fortnight, whilst Dyche doesn't think that you can get a huge amount out of international breaks because strategically you just lose key players all over the place to international duty, one thing that he has been able to do, probably for the first time this season, is over the past fortnight he has had Jack Harrison there, he has had Beto there, he has had Dominic Calvert-Lewin there, he has had Dwight McNeil there, and he's had Arnaud Danjuma there, and they've all been fit and they've all been available. That is Everton's first choice front five, and you would think that they would have been able to get some good work together. I think really in terms of building a relationship and some kind of attacking cohesion that will hopefully help Everton going forward. And obviously Abdoulaye Doucouré and James Garner, two of the three potential centre midfielders sitting behind whichever of the front three that start, have also been there. So it was a good opportunity for Everton, this, I think. Obviously, we know that Jurgen Klopp has highlighted quite a lot his displeasure at the amount of 12:30 kickoffs on a Saturday that the Liverpool are getting. Here's another one. They have been slow starters in games for a while. Everton, by contrast, are very, very quick starters. I think it could be a really interesting game tomorrow, to be honest.
Chris, obviously, Everton going to Anfield is a daunting prospect for all Blue supporters, and I think if you'd have said a couple of weeks ago about Everton going to go across Stanley Park to Anfield, everyone would have been that little bit of dread and that little bit of fear. Mm-hmm. But Everton will actually arrive at Anfield tomorrow with a bit of form, with a bit of confidence, and who knows what could happen.
Yeah, that's one way of putting it. I mean, that's an unfortunate thing. If you remember as many derbies as I do, they talk about form going out the window in derbies. I'm not too sure. Whatever Everton seem to be doing, the problem has been, I mean, most of the time, obviously, Liverpool have a stronger team than Everton. They have greater resources and usually have more talented players. I think even the most staunch Evertonian, would admit to that. But the problem has been that too many times over such a long period now, no matter where both sides are in the table or how they're doing, Everton haven't played to capacity in derby matches, haven't played to the full potential, and that's the great concern. We all know. I mean, Dyche said in his pre-match press conference, what a good outfit Liverpool are, the talent that they've got in their ranks. But Evertonians just want to see Everton playing to the best of their ability. I mean, there was a time going back to when I was younger in the 90s. I remember, that back then Liverpool had a very good team then. I mean, but they were kind of dubbed the Spice Boys at the time because maybe they didn't have the greatest backbone, and then Joe Royle had his self-styled Dogs of War, and Joe never lost a derby to Liverpool over 5 games, and for a time, seems a long time ago now, haven't had the Indian side over Liverpool, whereas in recent times it's just been far too one-sided a fixture, and it's not just because Liverpool are a better team. Everton haven't turned up in terms of like mentally for these occasions. Remember the last derby at Anfield, Sean Dyche's first away game, obviously that terrific result and performance against Arsenal in his first game. Go to Anfield, hardly laid a glove on them, ended up getting beat 2-0. And it was like that pantomime scuffle towards the end where it was almost like, oh, I better show a bit of fight here just to sort of keep up appearances. So, yeah, they do go into this game on the back of 3 wins out of 4, as Joe says, albeit punctuated by that terrible Luton Town game in between all of that. But yeah, you just want the real Everton to turn up and at least, you're not demanding victory, but make a good account of themselves and play to their potential.
Joe, this game tomorrow, because obviously Sean Dyche has spoke at length a lot this season when things have gone bad and things have gone good, about how he sees this progress and the signs that things move in the right direction, even when Everton been beaten, was a transfer created, etc. But in order to kind of prove that things are moving in the right direction, that he is finally, getting his imprint on this team, there'll be no finer way than to go and get a positive result at Anfield tomorrow, is to say, this is proof that we are moving in the right direction.
Yeah, I mean, obviously that'd be a huge string to his bow. I think really for him to be able to make that case, he probably needs to win one of the next 3 games in the Premier League. I think we all know and understand that it's going to be difficult at Anfield tomorrow. Certainly not impossible, but difficult. But when you look at the next few games before the next international break, obviously it's Anfield, then it's away at West Ham, then it's at home to Brighton. All 3 very difficult games against sides that are in Europe this season, and obviously it's certainly in Brighton and West Ham's case is sides that have risen on a positive trajectory that I think most Everton supporters would have hoped their own club would have done similar. And he probably needs to pick up a result from one of those 3 games. All 3 of those games are going to be very difficult. Where the Bournemouth result helped us, it takes a little bit of the pressure going into this derby. It does feel the last fortnight has felt a lot more comfortable than perhaps the week before then after the Luton game. Given how much pressure there was to win that Bournemouth game, it really has kind of relieved some of the pressure. And what Dyche now needs to do, if he is to kind of make that case for there is sustainable progress that's being made, as opposed to Everton just living from day to day, result to result, and hoping that enough is good enough, then they need to probably start pulling out the odd result, like, obviously it'd be a landmark win if they were to go to Anfield and win, but perhaps at West Ham or against Brighton, just to kind of add some flesh to the bone and just keep their heads above the water, create a bit of a buffer zone to the bottom 3. It was really interesting listening to Dyche talk yesterday, because there are times when he opens up a little bit more, and so normally after better runs of results, and some of the insights can be quite telling. And I think that one of the things was quite clear yesterday was that he understood the importance and the size and the magnitude of a Merseyside derby. I think just speaking to him, obviously some people are seeing the stuff, the press conference that was live, but then in the separate bit after, which I'm part of, and speaking to him off the camera, I don't think I wasn't left in any doubt that he was aware of the kind of the significance of this, and how much of a privilege it was to view an occasion this big from the inside, which of course, he had a really good playing career, and we all know what he's done as a manager, but it's the first time that he's perhaps reached this echelons of these heights of the game. And it's good to see that he kind of has that understanding and awareness, and you hope that he's able to drum that into the players, because sadly, I think a lot of people listening to this would assume and hope that the players wouldn't need telling that. But unfortunately, there have been too many occasions over recent years where that hasn't been on show. And Chris alluded to it then, but the Anfield defeat was so disappointing last season. Obviously, the score, come away from a 2-0 defeat, obviously hit the post before Everton, before Liverpool went at the other end and scored, but it wasn't necessarily the result, it was the manner of it. Everton was so docile, so flaccid. like Chris said, that the fight at the end was almost a bit of a pantomime scenario where it was like as if a couple of players ago, we've not been able to show that that we have the fight on the pitch. We've got to make up for it in the last minute by having a little bit of a scuffle with a few players pulling a few shirts and shoving a few players and things like that, almost to kind of cover up the 78 odd minutes that had happened before then, because Everton were terrible. It really undermines the wonderful performance of Everton. It was so good about the victory over Arsenal the week before. So, I think one thing that Everton and Dyche certainly needs to do this time is they really, really need, almost as important as getting any result is, they need to show some fights. They need to show some determination, some resilience, some passion, some battle. I don't think they should necessarily be scared of this Liverpool side. And this is an Everton side that can be aggressive, can be tenacious, can hustle and harry opponents, and good quality opponents, as we've seen against Villa and Brentford this season. So, it's a big game. It would be absolutely incredible if Everton were able to get something from it. But they don't necessarily need to get a win for Dyche to show that, to have a case to say that some progress is being made. I think a lot of it would be the manner of the performance tomorrow as well. And then crucial to that is if they don't get a result but do get something they can take from the performance, then building on that to get a result against West Ham or Brighton.
Obviously, what Joe says there is correct in terms of them characteristics of what everyone wants to see from Everton. But how important do you think tomorrow is in terms of Everton off to a good start? Because obviously we saw it against Luton, Everton started well but couldn't get a goal. But then against Bournemouth, they started on the front foot, get a goal after 8 minutes. They just seemed to relax everyone, and Everton were able to play with a little bit more freedom than we've seen them play in recent time. So it's paramount tomorrow is that Everton get off to the best possible start they can. They don't go behind early doors and are chasing the tails or fearing the worst.
Yeah, I definitely think so. I mean, I guess statistics at most clubs are that, if you score first, you do tend to win. I don't know the whole science across that with other teams, but it was pointed out in recent times about what Everton's particular statistic is with this. And it was interesting because obviously Jordan Pickford came back from international duty in the week, qualified for another major tournament with England, defeated Italy in a repeat of obviously the last Euros final at Wembley. And England obviously came from behind to win 3-1. And Jordan was asked after the game, did you ever think you weren't going to win this? And he said, no, we didn't say that. We'd worked on it all week and we knew what we were going to do. We came back and obviously kept patience and got the victory. So he's got that mentality with the Three Lions. So he'd love to bring that back to Everton, because it was pointed out that under Dyche, when Everton have scored first in a Premier League game, they've never actually lost. And conversely, when the opponents have scored first, they've never actually won. I think the only time they've come from behind to win any game was the Doncaster Rovers in the Carabao Cup, a team at the foot of the League Two table. So against the Premier League peers, it seems to be absolutely crucial. And so we've talked about it so many times in recent seasons, the mentality of this Everton squad and whether they are fragile, or just if they've got something from a sporting point of view, from a football point of view, a lead to hold on to. It's something Joe's discussed many times. But whatever it is, because we've had changes in personnel. I mean, we were saying this under Marco Silva, and, there's a lot of different players now. There does seem to be that fragility where if they do, like Luton Town game, okay, they were losing, but they still should have had enough in the tank and enough time there to keep patience and to turn things around, and they didn't. So, yeah, I would say it is crucially important for them to get off to a good start, and if they were to get an early goal. I'm doing a piece today about the 3 occasions that Everton have actually won at Anfield in the Premier League era, and the last 2 of those, obviously Richarlison during the coronavirus when it was played behind closed doors, and then Kevin Campbell in 1999. Both of those were like very early goals, 3rd minute for Richarlison, 4th minute for Campbell, and able to cling on. So I think with this current Dyche team and the stats that have been borne out with them, definitely an important factor.
Joe, looking ahead to Saturday's game, tomorrow's game, I think we can all kind of half predict what the team is going to be. But I think Dyche has somewhat of a conundrum when it comes to midfield, given, James Garner's done so well against Bournemouth in the middle of the park. Obviously, Rudiger and Glenn missed out from that game due to injury. Amazon Onana coming in as a last-minute replacement for him. But obviously tomorrow, Sean Dyche has every available option to him in terms of Garner, James Garner, Onana, Decore. Although I would like to see us stick with the three that started against the win over Bournemouth, there's something inside that thinks Idrissa Gana Gueye will come back in. What do you think?
Yeah, I think James Garner's the big question, isn't it? I think that Garner's in a position where he's essentially become undroppable due to his performances over the past 4 to 6 weeks, whether that be out wide as he did against Brentford, whether it be in the middle like he did against Villa when he was partnered with Onana, or whether it be in the middle like he was when he was so effective against Bournemouth the other week. So that's the big question, I think. Does Garner play in the middle? James Garner play in the middle? His favourite position? Dyche definitely sees that as his best position as well, but he's also a fan of his versatility. Or do we see Garner move over to the right of midfield? And that's the conundrum. I know from my notifications and timelines that the vast majority of people that are messaging me are saying it's got to be James Garner in the middle. They're saying two things about tomorrow. One, James Garner has to start in the middle. And two, Everton have to be ambitious tomorrow. They have to go there on the front foot. That I think supporters would be disappointed if Dyche turned up, put 10 men on the edge of the box and defended for most of the game, which it's a difficult one because you weigh up it's almost your heart versus your head. I think everybody wants to go there and take the game to Liverpool. That's completely understandable, but it's also trying to work out what the most effective way of getting a positive result from there would be. And there probably is an argument to say that James Garner out on the right of midfield, operating in the way that he did against Brentford, kind of leading that press and with the traditional three in centre midfield, I could see why Dyche might want to do that, but it would feel a little bit of a gamble, I think, if he did, bearing in mind where public sentiment is at this moment. I also think it's probably quite interesting as well to work out almost how much the international break might have changed Dyche's perspective on this, because obviously 2 weeks ago this question would have been asked within the context of Andy Robertson starting at left back, whereas he picked up that injury now that's going to rule him out for a while. So it's more than likely going to be Kostas Tsimikas at left back for Liverpool, who is, with all respect to him, not of the same caliber as a player as Robertson. So then what do you do? Do you go, Tsimikas perhaps might not be as comfortable on the ball, so you get Garner there just absolutely relentlessly pursuing him, hoping to capitalise on a mistake like he did for the goal against Bournemouth? Or do you actually go the other way and you go, well, Jack Harrison, running at him, taking him on, trying to expose his defensive frailties might be the best way forward? If I'm honest, the answer, I'm not entirely sure. I haven't given up on trying to predict Dyche, because I think more often than not, and this is probably due to the nature of the thinness of the squad, you can normally get to 9 of the 11 without really having to kind of exercise your mind. But I do he does like to throw in the odd quirky one. I remember at Brentford, the win against Brentford, I thought it was a gamble when he put Garner on the right of midfield, because it meant dropping Danjuma. And I think where public sentiment, or at least from the Everton fans, was at that point was a negative change, a defensive change at a time that Everton needed a positive result. And obviously he did that, and it had an incredibly positive impact and got the win. So fair play to him for that. But Garner has definitely made a very strong case for the centre midfield. And one thing that Dyche, I don't think, can necessarily say is, I'm not sure he can fall back on the argument to say that the game is too big or important, or the opponent's too lofty to try someone who's less experienced in that role than, say, obviously Idrissa Gueye. Because this time last season, when it came to this fixture, he threw Ellis Sims up front to start, which was us all by surprise. A bold move to put a young player with limited Premier League experience in at the deep end. So, with that history, you think that would suggest that obviously Garner has more experience at Premier League level than Ellis Sims did, but he's still a very young player at the beginning of his career in the centre midfield at this level. But that's a conundrum that he's got. The easiest thing for Dyche to do, I think, is stick with James Garner in the middle and say, I'm sticking with a winning side. And I think that if he was to do that, it would also be easier because I think the fans would be willing to give him more leeway if the game didn't go however wanted. However, obviously his job isn't necessarily to curry favour with the fans through tactics, it's to do it through results, and that's what he's got to weigh up when he picks his 11 tomorrow.
We can all know what's going to happen now with Costas Tsimikas after that, Joe. He's going to have the game just like But no, Bees, Joe makes a good point there, just because obviously, does Sean Dyche stick with the winning team, or does he change things up? If you was in Sean Dyche's shoes, what would you be doing?
I'd be getting at the left back. I think for me, that's why you got to have Jack Harrison on him. So it's there's not going to be many areas that Everton are able to pinpoint for Liverpool. Potentially having a weak link in there, or somebody you can try and expose. So whatever you can get out, try and get the advantage and have them all, naturally attack-minded player in that area. And we all know how consistent Andy Robertson's been for them in that position over the years. He's been quite the torment for Everton. He was in the thick of that little scuffle as well towards the end. He's a proper wind-up merchant, as much as he's seems to be the model pro off the field. In the heat of the derby battle, he's going to be there or thereabouts. And there's been a few incidents over the years. So yeah, also a terrific player as well. Whatever your allegiance is, what a talent he is. So for him to be missing, yeah, I'd have Jack Harrison. And then I just think James Garner has earned his place in the middle as well. I remember he said to me after that, to be fair to James, he came out and spoke after that harrowing 4-0 defeat at Aston Villa back in August. And I asked him then what his favourite, where he preferred to play, and it would have been easy for him to say, I'll go wherever the gaffer puts me. But he said, no, I prefer to play in the middle. That's my favourite position. And we're seeing that now, as much as Dyche likes the fact that he is versatile and he's clever enough and talented enough to do that. The manager referenced that again in his press conference yesterday. He's useful for him in the fact that he can operate in other areas. I think he's earned that right in the middle now. And as Joe said, it'd be a bold move, and he can sort of fall behind of, he's looking for excuses, but saying that stick with a winning team rather than put Idrissa Gueye back in there. Because I suppose on the one hand you say, well, if there is a game that you want Idrissa Gueye to be coming in, it'd be sort of a tough one like this. But being overly cautious hasn't sort of benefited Everton at all, really, in these fixtures in recent times. So yeah, I'd stick with James, because I want to see James Garner in the middle, and I want to see Jack Harrison, who obviously we talked the other day on the podcast, that goal when Joe and I were speaking, he scored against Bournemouth. Not too many players could score a goal like that. And if he was to do something like that in a Merseyside derby, I think he's made no secret the fact that he was a boyhood Liverpool fan. And if he was to sort of, he scored at Anfield, hasn't he, already for Leeds United? If he was to pull something out like that out the bag for Everton, it could make the difference.
One man who we've spoke a lot about on this podcast over the years is Dominic Calvert-Lewin. But unlike in previous times, today we're not talking about whether he'll be available or whether the latest injury or how long he's going to be out for, because thankfully he has been back fit and firing in recent weeks. And it was obviously October 2020 when Calvert-Lewin scored against Liverpool at Goodison in a 2-2 draw, and he was absolutely superb that day. And Joe, it does feel now, doesn't it, as if like Sean Dyche's patience, the way he's managed Calvert-Lewin, he's reaping the benefits of that little bit of time, that little bit of easing him back in. Because in recent weeks, I know we spoke about it, but he's been absolutely superb.
Yeah, he has. He has obviously started the last three. He's been involved in each of the last 5 games, and within that run, he scored 3 goals. I don't think we've had a consistency like that from Dominic Calvert-Lewin since the beginning of. So we certainly didn't have it last season, and I'm not sure we had it the season before. So it really. The patience has paid off. The approach has paid off with Dyche to Calvert-Lewin over the international break, where Calvert-Lewin kind of heaping praise on Dyche for the way in which he was able to do that. So I think Dyche deserves a lot of credit for the way in which he's handled Dominic Calvert-Lewin and 1 or 2 others as well. In fairness, Jack Harrison perhaps being another one, because been quite interesting listening to what people have been saying in relation to Harrison's comeback, where it's quite interesting that Calvert-Lewin, obviously, the time has been, the effort has been be as patient as possible. With Harrison, it sounds like Harrison's been quite keen to get back ahead of schedule. And Dyche has taken the position to trust the player and trust his interpretation of his body to get him back a little bit earlier. So I think it shows that Dyche is willing to kind of be adaptable to each player's situation, and he's getting an increasing track record of being proven right with it. We spoke with Sean Dyche about this yesterday, and put Calvert-Lewin's comments back to him to say what he thought. And I thought it was quite interesting, really, because I wrote a piece on it that went online this morning, with Dyche talking about his own playing career. And he had a time, 1997, he moved to Bristol City, and he was a big signing for the club at the time. A lot of expectation, a lot of pressure. Suffered a bad back injury, and then trying to play through it, trying to rush himself back, trying to take on the mantle of I can do this, I can play through the niggles, but then putting in poor performances and getting booed off by his own fans as a result. I thought it was quite talented. I thought it was quite insightful, really. Until it's easy to kind of to look down and say, well, that wasn't at the top flight level of things like that. I mean, it's hugely important experience, and it's obviously shaped him and the manager that he is today, and that's shaping the decisions that he's making today. And I thought, it was quite interesting to see how Dyche's own experiences as a player and the pain and pressure and having to deal with that expectation in the context of your own body and that's difficulties. I thought it was really quite telling. But Dominic Calvert-Lewin, he looks to be back, obviously, touch wood. I think, I said there he's played 5 consecutive fixtures, obviously, since he came back for the second half against Arsenal. I think what's probably even more promising for Everton is you can extrapolate that over a longer period, because really the injury that kept him out for those few games after Villa was the facial injury. His body was ready for the second game of the season and has been ready since then. It was just obviously the cheek injury he suffered after colliding with Martinez that then kept him out for a little bit. And then on top of all that, so he's been available from game 2 to game 8 effectively. And then he's just had another fortnight with just break just to top it all off as well. So it really, really is promising. And actually, I think one of the things I started this podcast talking about was what Dyche was talking about, the momentum and how the international breaks can kill momentum. And I actually think that this season, the way in which it's transparent, because obviously there will be a third international break before we even get to Christmas, which just feels like nonsense, to be perfectly honest. But what it does for Sean Dyche when he's got such a threadbare squad is it gives him he can break up the first half of the season into little passages of weeks and games, and he can handle and take care of the players over each tranche of fixtures. And when you've got players like Dominic Calvert-Lewin, who has had issues with injuries over recent seasons, it just gives him the opportunity to manage him so much more carefully. And the pressure isn't even there of an upcoming game to raise the question as to whether or not you risk him or things like that. So, Everton are in a really positive place with Calvert-Lewin, I think, as it stands. And, that's obviously so crucial because, if Calvert-Lewin, if he starts 25 games plus this season, then I think Everton stay up with little trouble. I'm not saying they climb too high up the table, but I think that'll be enough to take them out of a relegation battle. So, I mean, it really is important. It really is promising. It's got to keep creating the chances for him, which, XG was one of the talking points of the first 8 games of the season. It'll be interesting to see how that holds up now Everton come across better defences over a prolonged period of time.
In terms of battles, though, Bees, because obviously, it's all about small marginal games in professional sport these days. But in terms of battles, you would like to think, that Calvert-Lewin could give the Liverpool backline, the 2 centre-backs who have had moments of struggle this season, if we're being honest, a tough afternoon.
Yeah, then that's one thing about Calvert-Lewin, isn't he? Certainly, and from an aerial perspective, there are a few better in the Premier League. He's a big, strong lad, look after himself, and can get in the mix of things. So, why not? He's also got the honour of he's won 2 penalties at Anfield in recent seasons as well. I mean, don't get too many of them, do you? Certainly as an opposition side, certainly as an Everton team going to Anfield. And I know the neighbours weren't too pleased about those decisions, but I can't see any complaints with those. So whether there are fans in there or not, that's all. Could be a difference, couldn't it? I mean, I know Frank Lampard was complaining about referees in this fixture. He got himself into trouble, didn't he, after his trip to Anfield? But yeah, if Dom can do a little spin or a little run or something and get behind the centre backs, who knows? Have a decision for the referee to make. It'd just be interesting to see if he actually stepped up and took any resultant spot kick himself, because obviously be determined to carry on his recent scoring spree. But yeah, he's certainly one. If you have a fit and firing Dominic Calvert-Lewin, that is one of the other ways in which you could get at Liverpool, and sort of without harking back too much to a bygone era, like I was talking about before with the Dogs of War against the Spice. But I mean, that's what Everton need to do. They do have a degree of physicality. Opposition managers are always talking about the size of the Everton players and second balls and things like that, and how they should be a threat from set pieces. So let's see a bit of that.
Off the pitch this week, gents, there was some big news, and that was that the hearing into Everton's charge against Premier League profit and sustainability rules has commenced. Obviously, it was believed that it was going to start next Wednesday, but it started this week. Joe, I know you're going to write about this a little bit later on. I'll be into it online and tomorrow's paper, but I don't think it'll be underestimated kind of just how big this hearing actually is for Everton Football Club.
It really is significant. I think we can attach a large degree of importance to it despite not knowing a huge amount about it. Obviously, the details that are being made public are incredibly vague, and I think one of the interesting things that I'm looking out for is really, once this concludes, to see what does end up in the public domain. Regardless of which way the decision comes, will the Premier League give us more insight into what the allegation was and what the cases of the two sides were? Time frame is also an interesting one as well, because obviously, whilst we know it's underway now, I don't think we're expecting a decision imminently. It sounds like we're probably going to get a conclusion next month. But then, if I think this is the case, that if both sides had the right to appeal, then what would that mean? Would that mean that come next month we would be told that the process is still active and not be told what it was all about and which way the commission came down on? And how long would an appeal kind of backtrack things? So it is obviously fascinating. It's very difficult in the sense that we know such little about what's going on. We don't know what we will find out beyond what the verdict is and a punishment if one is deemed required. Obviously, Everton deny any wrongdoing, and if they can stand up that case, then no punishment would be necessary. And also the fact that there is no precedent. Everton are setting the precedent here, because although Manchester City have received a huge number of charges of a similar nature, obviously their case hasn't progressed due to the size of it, I guess, but the complexity as a result. So Everton are the guinea pig here. So we just have such little to go on, but obviously we know that some of the potential punishments, if Everton were to found a breach, well, there isn't a positive one there for Everton, is there? So, one could be a points deduction. Well, that would make a very difficult season even harder. It could be, potentially be a transfer ban. I mean, if that was to be the case next summer, then that would be a really, really fascinating one for Everton to try deal with, because if Everton would suffer a transfer ban next summer, well, if you look at this, I mean, it's already a small squad and there's a significant amount of players that will be out of contract next summer. Players that you would think that the club would probably prefer to see their contracts expire rather than offer new deals because they can't sign other players, and then just end up being trapped in the same circle that they're already in. And then fine being the other one, which again, the Premier League will be under pressure to dole out a fine the other clubs see as a deterrent to wrongdoing if any is found. But obviously against that backdrop, Everton's finances aren't in a particularly strong position at the minute, and they'll have to weigh up around the impact that any financial punishment would have on the current position of the club. So, I mean, we know next to nothing about this, and even the Premier League, I guess, is setting precedent through this process. But there isn't any way of escaping the fact that it's a case that's going to have huge implications for Everton Football Club, and this is a position that the Premier League is going to find itself in not once but obviously twice over the coming months, because it's the Premier League that will also be playing a significant role in relation to approval or turning down the takeover attempt for 777 partners. So, when you look at who holds the cards when it comes to Everton's future, it's easy to look at 777 and Josh Wanda. It's easy to look at Farhad Mashiri. It's easy to look at Rights and Media Funding and some of the other people and groups and companies Everton have got loans from. But probably the people that have the biggest influence on where Everton's short-term and long-term future lies is going to be the Premier League and the the two decision-making processes that they have to embark on. Obviously, if the Commission come back, which is independent, the Premier League comes back and find Everton haven't breached anything, then the Premier League don't have to decide on a punishment because there wouldn't be one. So, but either way, Everton's future lies very much in the Premier League's hands, and a lot of this is taking place behind closed doors, which isn't ideal. I think a bit more transparency might be helpful. Maybe we'll get that further down the process, and at that point we can judge how fit and proper we see the processes and fit for purpose they are. But unfortunately, Everton have put themselves in a situation where they're the guinea pig. So it's just going to be an interesting few weeks and few months. But when we do find out, obviously we'll be reporting it and analysing it in as much detail as we possibly can.
To coin a phrase, Bees, what Sean Dyche likes to use, there's a lot of noise around Everton. It's showing no signs of going anywhere, is it?
He said, didn't he? And obviously his recent discussions that have come out with the BBC, and then nothing will be the same. I think there was a couple of different ones where he actually contradicts himself somewhat, but they went along the lines of he was at Burnley for 9.5 years and he had about one booking him from that one, and then he reckoned he had about 3 in him from his time at Everton already. I think he may have actually done a second quote where he said that number's now gone up. A whole series of Dyche books in there. Yeah, he was asked about this. Perhaps it's a bit unfair, but it's inevitable that he was asked about in the press conference, and he said he was concentrating on the things that he can control, because he's like the rest of us. I'm not saying he'll be in the dark. I'm sure he's privy to a lot more information on this than you and I. But it's not something he can control. He can only influence those events on the pitch. Yeah, like Joe says, that the problem with this is it's just so little detail has come out. We know that Everton face this one charge, but it's never actually been said what it is. We might all have an understanding what it relates to, but it's not like whatever the charge is, and if they were to be guilty, then obviously there would have to be some kind of repercussions for that. But it just seems strange in that after all those years of often wasteful spend for Everton, this is coming at a time when they've hardly spent anything at all in the transfer market, and certainly have recouped a lot more than they've actually spent. So it does seem very odd, but it's and as Joe said, it's likely to rumble on, just because a decision either way might be reached next week. That will probably not be the end of the matter.
Gents, it's that time of the week again. It's back. Predictions. Joe, let's start with you. What are you going for tomorrow?
Go for 1-1. Go for
sit on the fence for a 1-1.
Well, yeah, that's it. Everton to come out fast, get an early goal, and then end up being pushed further and further back, and then Liverpool getting an equaliser at some point. But a competitive derby where Everton come away with plenty to take, a performance and at least a point. I think it's definitely a possibility tomorrow. I'm really looking forward to it.
What's the feeling the Beesley household's optimistic?
The Beesley household, a collective prediction. You could get 5 different ones. No, unfortunately, I've already been asked about this earlier this week, so I can't go back on it. I was asked by our esteemed colleague Tom Kavia, who's shortly heading off to South America, where he might encounter some guinea pigs of health. And he asked me about this, and I was a bit coy at first. I said we've got bigger things to concern ourselves with at Everton at the moment, like whether there's going to be a football club to be covering next season. But he kept pressing me on this matter, and the way that Tom does. But he wanted to know my prediction for the weekend. And I said, I predict that all the 50-50s will go Liverpool's way. That the Anfield crowd will be complaining about the over physicality from the Everton players, but in reality they're not going to do anything near enough. They won't lay a glove on Liverpool again, and for about the third straight visit to Anfield, I'm afraid I'm going to have to say this: 2-0 Liverpool.
Oh, please.
After that big build up there, I thought you were going to hit it with a nice positive score.
No, that's the way you have me.
And you deliver that pile driver. Well, in order to leave a positive note after Chris's 2-0 Liverpool prediction, I am going to go 1-0 Everton. I think they will edge it just in a far from classic, scrappy affair, and I wouldn't be surprised if we scored off a set piece.
But I'm glad you went last, Sir Connor. I like that.
yeah. We will, of course, be back on Monday to look back on the game around Anfield on Saturday and, of course, react to all the latest news around Everton, because it is certainly not quiet at the minute on and off the pitch. But for today, Joe, Bees, thank you much for joining me. You've been listening to the Robley Podcast.